Welcome to Hack Your Happiness.
I felt that I have been consistent at a lot of things of learning skills, and you kind of feel like, oh, this is just terrible. I'm just like a tortoise. I'm just going in a straight line. But then all of a sudden, you will have these kind of massive exponential growth in what you're able to do.
Are you a teen or adult looking for more happiness in every day and ways to connect with people in your life?
You've come to the right place. Hack Your Happiness is a podcast designed to bring you the behind the scenes of what brings iconic individuals happiness, plus their life hacks.
I'm Mercedes.
And I'm Anastasia.
And we're the two teens behind Small Bits of Happiness.
We're interviewing Olympic athletes, entrepreneurs, celebrities, and more.
Throughout all of our episodes, you'll find great conversations, hacks that you can take away and try in your life, inspiration, as well as unique and surprising insights. Today, we're speaking with Catherine Martin. Catherine Martin is a 4-time Academy Award-winning production designer, costume designer, and producer. She has collaborated with her husband and creative partner Baz Luhrmann on all of their productions for over 30 years, establishing them both as some of the world's most innovative creators of film, theater, and entertainment. Catherine is responsible for some of the most iconic and gorgeous costume designs, as well as production sets, and this includes the iconic red dress that Nicole Kidman wore in Moulin Rouge.
Oh my gosh, it is so beautiful.
She's also responsible for the dazzling and glamorous set designs in the film The Great Gatsby, plus 600 individual costumes from the party scenes. All of Catherine's work is pure genius and eye candy, and we both absolutely adore it. Catherine's insight into the fashion industry and her incredible talent in making historical pieces relevant and fresh for the modern audience is unparalleled. Catherine also has her own homewares brand called Catherine Martin Home. We are beyond thrilled to have Catherine here with us today to talk to her about her experiences, learn some of her hacks, discover what brings Catherine small bits of happiness, as well as how she balances all of her incredible and inspiring and iconic work with spending time with her husband and their 2 children. Welcome, Catherine.
Well, lovely to be here and lovely to meet you both. I'm thrilled to be chatting with you today.
Before we get into this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, we just want to quickly say, check out our happiness wellness products designed by us for individuals of all ages to help you bring a small bit of happiness to your home with our tangible tips and tools. Check them out in the show notes. Yes,
so excited
we
to be
are
talking with you.
absolutely thrilled as well. You are an iconic 4-time Academy Award-winning fashion set and production designer. But take us back to the beginning. How did your journey begin?
Well, I was always a kid that loved arts and craft and making things. And I think sometimes I was more interested in quantity than quality. I was very prolific. And I just loved the process of making things, this magical thing, which is taking sort of an idea and turning it into a physical object. And so that's something I've loved all my life, and I still find that magical. And it started with that, and I loved sewing. And I loved clothes, and I started on my mum's sewing machine when I was 6. And yes, I think it's a love of the magic of having an idea and then it coming to life.
Incredible. I love how you put that, like having an idea and just seeing it through your own hard work and effort and energy turn into something. And I think that that can apply to so much, whether it's art and craft or design or even like writing a book or training for something. You know, you put in the effort and it shows up in the end.
I think that that's a lesson that really rings home for me, because sometimes I think everybody, when they go to work or they're faced with a task, you sometimes just go, I don't want to do this. And as I've gotten older, I've just realized there's a lot to be said just for mechanically doing it. You know, like we all want to feel inspired or feel moments of elevation in the process of whether it's writing or even cleaning the bathroom or whatever. We're trying to find these sort of serotonin moments. And I think they come at the most unexpected times. And often they're triggered just by doing it.
Totally.
You know, like a trainer I had once, a physical trainer, a personal trainer said to me once, no one can be 100% of themselves every day, and no one certainly can be 120% of themselves every day. But what you can do is show up, and doing 50% is better than doing nothing. And I just have to remind myself, and I think a lot of women and girls have such high standards. I think, we tend to border on perfectionism. And so if we can't meet the ridiculous standards that we set for ourselves, we tend to say, well, I'm not going to do it. And honestly, I really struggle with that. But as I get older, I just keep saying to myself, just do something. Doesn't matter. You may think it's not up to your exacting standards, but just for your own mental health, it's much better to engage in something, even if it's a lower level than you think you should be doing. It's like, I think that's why people don't work out too, is they always think that they have to be throwing up at the end of a session, when really, part of exercise is mental health. And, if you walk around your block enough times, you've improved your health and you've cleared your mind.
I love that so much, because you're right. We have such high standards for ourselves, and we think that if we're not like excelling at all different parts of our life and all different aspects of our life, then we're not doing a good enough point. And that we shouldn't just do it at all, because why would we want to do bad on something? But that's the whole point, is that, it's all about putting your best foot forward. Exactly. And also like understanding that sometimes it's not going to be perfect, but it's better that you show up and try than not show up at all because you're scared it's not going to be perfect.
Better done than perfect.
Exactly. And I love it.
Yeah. It's like the French have a saying that perfection is the enemy of good, and it's true that learning is not linear. It's not like every day you do something and then you feel the progress gradually, or well, at least that's not my experience. I felt that I have been consistent at a lot of things, of learning skills, and you kind of feel like, oh, this is just terrible. I'm just like a tortoise. I'm just going in a straight line. But then all of a sudden you will have these kind of massive exponential growth in what you're able to do. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said. I mean, it's to just, like Nike says, just do it. Like, don't think about it too much. And if you're consistent and just do a little bit every day, it's amazing all the skills you can learn, whether it's a computer program or, whatever skills you want to learn. You may not become, a nuclear physicist, but you might learn a lot more about it. You might not become, Serena Williams, who could. There are very few people in the world who can become, but you could become better at tennis.
Exactly. And you never know how good you might be at something, or how interested you might be in something, if you never even give it that shot or that potential. And I have to say, I love your trainer's quote, because it's true. Even if you are really good at something, you can't always be the same level of yourself, because things happen. We get sick, tired, we have different things going on, family needs, personal needs.
But just continuing to do it, even if it's a little bit less than usual. If you're having a rough day, maybe you don't want to go all out on your workout, but
accepting that.
Exactly, saying it's okay. I'm still just gonna walk, just moving your body and just doing something small is still momentum. It's still better than nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So your journey, it sounds like it's so amazing, and you found so many amazing things about yourself throughout it. But what do you think your most significant challenge has been, and how did you overcome this?
I think it's the anxiety of actually, failing as a creative person and avoiding confronting the creative challenges, because, it's easier to tidy up your desk or to do something completely time wasting or procrastinating. And then you realize that it kind of comes back to that, what we were talking about earlier. It's, I just chip away. If you just chip away at something, and it might not be a linear process. It might be that you are just hitting your head against a brick wall trying to solve one problem. So you go, okay, I'll put that to one side. I'll go for a walk around the block. I come back. I'll try something else for a little while and go back to it. And I think that all fits into this idea of being extremely self-critical and lacking confidence. You know, I've suffered from anxiety all my life. And sometimes it's been really, really bad. And as an adult, I've been able to find ways of dealing with it. And I think it's that combination of being a perfectionist, being someone who wants to always do 120%, and then also doubting your own ability to do it. It creates a kind of toxic cocktail that kind of stops you from putting one foot in front of the other. And so, yeah, I think that is something I really struggle with, and I still struggle with it. You know, do I have better skills, and can I find solutions to those problems more than I did when I was younger? Absolutely. But it's, you know, I talk to myself in my head a lot and say, okay, you're just not finding yesterday I was doing it on one project where I was trying to find a clear path to a task. And it was I just wasn't finding my way through that maze. So I went, okay, there is something I have to do anyway. It's on my list of to-dos. I know what I'm doing. So I did it, and it gave me a feeling of achievement. I felt like I'd done something. I was proud of myself for attacking it. And then this morning, the back of my brain must have been working, and I unlocked the other problem that I couldn't solve. So yeah, I think it's not being gentle enough. Like, it's really weird because you have to have consistency and discipline, but you have to be gentle on yourself too. So it's like a really weird thing because I'm using the word discipline and gentleness, but I think they actually go hand in hand.
Totally, they absolutely do.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to think about and point out, and so I love that you did, how, you know, creativity and your job, your work is absolutely beautiful, but it's so difficult because we go into a situation with a low self-confidence.
Exactly.
And, you know, perfectionist tendencies. And then with creativity and any type of art, it's subjective and people judge it. And some people might absolutely love it, and other people, they might not agree. And so how do you deal with that? How do you deal with, you know, having some people absolutely love a piece that you've created and others not to be the biggest fans?
I think that if you feel that you have done your best, that you have been involved in a project that you really believe in, you believe in the story, you believe in the approach, and you've given your all, that is something that, of course, you will get hurt if people criticize you. It's just human nature. But that also makes you able to enjoy, like, the hurt of critique, and it allows you to enjoy the thrill of praise. So it's like a double-edged sword. But I think I just say to myself, I know that I did my best, and I am proud of the project, and I feel it will stand the test of time. So you are entitled to your view. You know, you can't critique a critique, right? Everybody is entitled to their view. You know, the world is about opinion and judgment. And, you know, I think especially in a world that's so divided and everybody is so, you know, because the algorithm online encourages this idea of black and white, you know, because conflict equals clicks. I think that we have to, however hard it is, to allow different voices and have conversation and allow people to have different opinions. Obviously, there are some opinions that are not to have, you know, that are bigoted or cruel or mean or bullying or vilify other people. But I think an opinion respectfully held should be respected and encouraged, and conversation should be encouraged.
For sure.
I love that because you're right. Like, you need to fulfill yourself and make sure you're happy with whatever it is you're putting out into the world, be it creativity, music, art, maybe something written, or even like a school assignment, whatever it is that you're putting out into the world. If you're happy with it, that's the best that you can get and the best you can do, because there's billions of people out there and everyone has a slightly different perspective on everything.
Exactly. And just knowing that as long as it's not coming from a point of view that is meant to hurt you or to bully you, and it's just an opinion, that doesn't mean anything personally towards you.
Exactly, because you can't influence others' opinions, just like you have your own opinion,
Exactly.
they have their own, and it's important to respect others' opinions as so long as they're not harmful. And it's important to do things that fulfill ourselves first, because at the end of the day, that's all we have.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And, talking about school assignments, no one knows what you went through to hand in that piece of work. And if you know what you did to get there and the result doesn't equal your effort for whatever reason, I'm not encouraging you to say that's okay, but I'm saying there are sometimes extenuating circumstances. Some people, will have the struggle, they can never hand anything in on time, right? So maybe the victory was I handed it in on time, but maybe it wasn't the best they could have ever done. So maybe next time they have to hand it in on time and do better, and bit by bit you build your skill set to be able to combine all those things to excelling.
Totally.
Yeah,
I think that's just slowly building it up and mixing it with, oh, I achieved this, and then you're proud of yourself.
Giving yourself credit and recognizing that there's always room to grow. It's like that saying, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like,
exactly.
Yay, you achieved this. How can you be better next time? Because we're consistently, as soon as you stop improving, that means you stop trying. And it's always important to consistently look for how we can better ourselves.
I agree. And I mean, you have done so much amazing costumes and clothes that are based off historical fashion periods. And when you're creating these beautiful pieces, you must do a lot of research. So do you do this research by yourself, or do you have a team that helps you? And what's your usual process for that?
When Baz chooses a project that's set in a particular period, he will have a series of sources that he will want you to interact with, whether it's images or little drawings he's done or contemporary written works or tear sheets that he's ripped out of magazines or whatever. So he kind of gives you a visual framework. But the very beginning of the process is usually to absolutely assiduously research the period without making any variation. It's about a historical survey. And so that starts, as a combination of things. So I'll do a lot of my own personal research to get in the world. And then I will have a team who'll help me research things. So for instance, a long-term collaborator, Silvana Azzi, did a chart for Elvis I asked her, okay, let's get every single jumpsuit Elvis ever wore, and let's make a giant chart, and let's work out which performances in which year he wore them. Let's put them in chronological order so we're completely in the world of the jumpsuit. So we understand the reality. And then within the movie, Baz made choices based off that chart to tell the story better. So in effect, Elvis, when he first appeared in Las Vegas, he wore a kind of a black kung fu kind of uniform. But what the world knows Elvis as is a white jumpsuit wearing person. And so we made choices in the timeline by Baz made a rule. As long as it existed, we could compress and alter time. As long as we weren't telling a lie, Elvis really did wear this, we did change the order in which he wore things to make the story clearer for the audience. So we didn't fundamentally change Elvis's story, but we used historical references in his life, possibly out of order, so that the story was clearer.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. And I love how you blend history with fashion. That's just incredible. And we loved watching Elvis as a whole family. It was so beautifully done. And we learned a lot that we didn't know about Elvis. So it was very educational.
And I think all of, the jumpsuits and the way that the clothes portrayed Elvis in that certain period of his life was just so immaculate and articulate, and it just really showed the period that he was going through, and it really helped make you understand what he was going through better.
Yeah. So as a creative, and as you were mentioning earlier on in our interview, there's a lot of stressors involved. And how do you stay calm, or what do you do to help you, calm down during times of stress?
I do some meditation. I see someone I talk to that's an independent person. So my family and friends don't need to listen to me complain. I have great support from my family and my friends. I have great supportive relationships, and I have a lovely family life. My children are now grown up. One's 20 and one's 18. That they both don't live in our house anymore, which was really hard at first because, when you're a working woman, well, certainly for me, my entire life was my children, work, my husband, and then whatever else I could fit in around it. And so you suddenly think, what is my life going to be? After 20 years, you think, what's going to happen? There's a big void. So on the one hand, you're thrilled that your children are becoming independent, and that's what you want for them, to become their best selves. But on the other hand, you selfishly think of yourself and think, what's going to happen to me? But luckily, I have been, after the initial shock and really working through it, I've found a way of kind of connecting with myself more. I'm able to travel a lot more. It's nice not to have the day-to-day responsibilities of nagging someone to do something all the time. And so I think that's helped me find a little bit of inner calm as well, just knowing that there's a little bit. I think parents always feel responsible for their children, but when they're not living with you, and you see them flourishing, that just takes a little bit of that pressure off. So I think that's been helping me feel calm. But sometimes you just get overwhelmed and you have to acknowledge it, and I still get overwhelmed, where I just kind of feel this sort of heat rushing from my toes up to my head, thinking, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to be able to do it. And we're working on a project now where the timeline seems to be impossible. And I was just talking to my long-term colleague, Chris Tangy, and I said to him, we just can't let this overwhelm us, because the professionals that we're relying on to help us do this seem perfectly calm. And they've been doing this for, 40 years. So we've got to let them do their own worrying. Taking a walk. If you're totally freaking out, that's my solution for everything.
I think taking a walk is such a great way, especially when you're outside and it's nice out. Even if it's not that nice out, just spending some time breathing in some fresh air and just, being like grounding yourself and saying, like,
and also clears your
brain
mind.
off.
It clears your mind
Exactly.
in the best possible way.
Exactly. And I think that I love what you said about when you're overwhelmed, you just acknowledge it, because oftentimes then we get so busy trying to figure out a way to make us stop feeling so overwhelmed, when the best way to stop feeling overwhelmed is by saying, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I'm going to take a walk. And then I realize that I can't control what the other people are doing, and I'm going to let them worry about themselves. And I'm just going to focus on everything I can do, because there's nothing I can do about things that are out of my control.
Exactly. And
That's right.
And science shows that nature really does help us feel calmer, and seeing trees and all these beautiful things calms us. So
For sure. Yeah, and I mean, collaboration can be so hard sometimes because you're depending on other people to do work that,
it means a lot to you.
exactly. And it really shows a lot of trust when you're working with other people. And you and your husband, Baz, must work so well together because of all the incredible work that has come out of your joint ventures. But collaboration can come in many forms when working on a movie, and working with others can be really challenging. What are your top 3 tips for teens to help them collaborate better with other people in their lives?
I think the thing that's taken me the longest time in my life to learn is really active listening. I think when people are good at what they do or want to be helpful or are quick-witted, everyone wants the solution. You're motivated to put your hand up before you've even heard the question, a bit like on a quiz show. And what I found as I've gotten older, when you actually let people tell you what they're thinking or ask them questions to understand where they're coming from, a lot of the time, all the things that you're anxious about happening actually resolve themselves through that process of conversation. It gives you a perspective, like a more, because when you're in the micro of all the detail of the project, which is extremely important, it means you can't kind of see the broader landscape. And I think in the initial discussions in a collaborative project, whether it's, a science project or a theatre project or a writing project that you're all collaborating on, it's about those initial conversations and deeply listening to your collaborators and setting a process so you know what is expected of everyone, what the steps are, to get to where you're going, what everyone's responsibilities are within that process, and some tangible goals with a timeline. And I think that it's certainly the way that I think that has been successful in the way that we approach it. So whether it's, for us, it's about telling a story. So you have to understand the story first. You have to understand the perspective, which is the director, in this case, Baz, his view of the story. Like, how is he trying to tell the story? So I suppose it's also acknowledging, if there's a team leader, that whatever you think of that team leader, that's your job, is to help that team leader find the story and get you to the goal. And it's amazing how you may think things about people in a group and have judgment about their aptitude. And I'm not talking about Baz here, I'm just talking in general. And you may have doubts. But if you really put your heart and soul into the team project and in supporting each other to get to the goal, you'll probably be surprised at how people grow, either into their role or a third solution with great success for the project and without undue conflict comes to the fore. But I think it's when everybody's trying to be the boss, you end up with a fractious process. So I think it is understanding what the task is, understanding who everybody is in the process, defining the process, then allocating the jobs with a definable timeline, and then, knowing when you hit your goal.
Perfect. I love that.
I think so. And what I really love is how you talked about active listening.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we so often start getting caught in this loophole of the other person is saying something, and then you catch something that they say that you then want to talk about, and then you kind of tune out the rest of the things that they say, and then all of a sudden you just kind of get caught up in your own thoughts, and you really miss the whole point of what they're trying to say, because all of a sudden you're in your brain. It could be really important.
Exactly.
And so it's so important to genuinely listen with everything you have and understand what they're trying to say, because they could be instructions that could completely change the way that you view the project. And
Exactly.
additionally, having specific jobs for each thing that you're doing, because I think it's so easy to all of a sudden start doing things that you're not supposed to be doing under your own job, and then you start getting overwhelmed again because you're working on so many different parts and they don't always line up with everything that you're doing. So understanding what you need to do and what everybody else around you is doing, so you can have trust in them, have trust in yourself,
and also do a better quality job on your part
Exactly.
rather than trying to do a little bit of everything here.
Micromanage everybody else.
Exactly.
And define the goals and define people's roles and say, this is your responsibility. If you don't meet this goal, you haven't met to make it clear, and what the expectation is. It is collaboration, and being able to work as a team is fundamental to, I think, our future, because so many things will be done by AI or by, robots or some kind of mechanical device. But the one thing that, is undeniable is that humans in teams talking about things have changed the course of humanity for good and for bad. But ideas, when discussed in a group, they develop more quickly, and interesting third ideas that are spawned by the fact that you talk about a whole lot of different things come out of that. And I think it's really important, and not always needing to be the boss. Like, sometimes there is great pleasure in just being a good teammate.
Absolutely.
I agree. I think that oftentimes we are like, I want to be in charge. I remember when I was younger, every time that there was like a team project, I was like, I want to be the leader. But then eventually you start realizing that constantly fighting for authority just creates friction between the team members.
And the other thing is that when you aren't always in a leadership position, you can use that as a moment, an opportunity to learn from other people as leaders, and maybe how they are strong as leader and what you can take from that and then become a better leader in your own right.
Learning from other people and talking with other people and creating new ideas through conversation is just such a powerful tool, and I think that being able to do that more will allow for there to be even more innovation and for there to be even more.
And if you don't always agree with the people, who you might be working with, maybe you don't like the group that you're with for the science assignment or whatever it might be, realizing that you all have the same collective goal is such an empowering realization, because you don't have to love the people that you're always with, but you just have to care about an end result, and that can be enough to drive you towards success.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And the reality is, in life, you're not always surrounded by people you like. And, you need to be able to work with a variety of people who have different styles, different approaches. You can't always edit out people who rub you up the wrong way or don't fit with the way that you think that people in your team should behave. So it's a really important learning experience.
It absolutely is. And I think that a lot of teens are interested in your area, which is like fashion and costume design. And personally, as well as both of us, we would love to know how you decided to pursue a career specifically in costume design for film, because I know you were so interested in arts and crafts from a young age. But how did you specifically decide in this career path?
Originally, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And after I finished school, I went to art school for a year. But I realized I really wanted to be in an applied art form where there was a clear problem that needed to be solved, and that I really missed the collaborative process of working with other people. So I went and worked in fashion, and I apprenticed as a sample hand for a 2-year period. So I learned to make, it's like it's a skills-based thing where you learn how to make the sample garments that then go to the makers, from the fashion designer. And I was working overtime, and the radio was on, and there was an ad for a show that needed costumes and sets designed for International Youth Year. Now, this is going to really date me because International Youth Year, so 6-5, International Youth Year must have been in 1984 or 1983. And I thought, I can do that. So I went and applied. I got the job and I really loved doing it. And so I thought, you know what? I'm really into this. And so I started making costumes for a local theatre. Then I applied for NIDA, the National Institute of Dramatic Art, and people like Kate Blanchett went there, and Mel Gibson, and Judy Davis, and Kim Barrett, who designed all the Matrix movies, who's a colleague of mine, Angus Strathy, who did Deadpool. So all these, it's a school with a lot of great alumni. And I went and I studied there, and I realized that that's what I wanted to do with my life, and that it was not just a job, it was more of a vocation. Like I really loved it. The first year was very hard. I cried a lot. I found it really difficult. The second year was great. And at the end of the second year, we had to do a big exhibition. And Baz came and saw the exhibition and really liked the work I did and the work Angus Strathy did. And he sort of recruited us because in our final year, we had to do projects in the real world. And I went to work with him. So that's how that all happened.
That is such a great story. I love that. And I love how you weren't afraid to follow your interests and maybe change the trajectory of where you might have seen yourself going to where you went, and like not afraid to take those leaps and go to different schools. And I just think I really admire that, because it's so hard to do, and it's so cool how you found your true passion that doesn't just feel like work but truly is what you love, and how that was just it was so seamless. And obviously there are challenges, just like you said, your first year was a little bit tough.
It wasn't that seamless, but it was it was just, I'm so happy that that's what I ended up doing with my life, and I love what I do. It's expanded into all the areas that I love, whether it's set design, I adore. I love costume design. I love the fact it kind of creeps into graphics. I've had because of what I do, I've been able to do some interiors. I did a hotel interior in Miami with Baz, the Faena Hotel. They're just like, I've guest edited along with Baz and by myself various magazines. Like I've just got to do like such a great variety of projects and delved into so many interesting worlds. Really, that's been the thing that I've enjoyed the most. I think learning about things that you think you know about, but actually when you learn about it, you don't know it all.
And I mean, you have beautiful traditional and cultural aspects inside all of your amazing set designs and all of your clothes that you design. I mean, you do such a beautiful job of blending the story so seamlessly with the time period that it takes place in. And how do you balance preserving this heritage but still making those pieces so timeless?
Well, I think that's very much about Baz's approach to historical pieces, because he uses often historical stories to expose something about where we are now and to draw parallels between history and contemporary events. And both of us have a friend, a theatre director, who would always say, that's for the program notes. And what he meant was, if things are too obscure or can't be read by an audience, then you're not helping the story. So Baz always says, okay, so that's what it was like in 1925. How can we make sure that the audience understands the secret messages in those garments. Because what it might have meant in 1925, someone might have turned up, I don't know, wearing I'm just being ridiculous, an apple on their head, and it might have been William Tell fashion was all the rage. And so everybody's wearing apples on their head. But how helpful is that for you two who go to see, you need a program note or a subtitle explaining that, in 1925, there was a run on William Tell fashion or whatever, And so that has been something that he has really insisted upon. And I think there are a number of techniques that he has honed over the years. One of them we call sort of natural selection, which is there will be a number of appropriate historical choices for a garment or for scenery, and you then pick the one that helps tell the story the best. Or you may use, like in Moulin Rouge, the rule in Moulin Rouge was you could use anything that existed in the time period in that year, but you could use it out of context. So, for instance, in Moulin Rouge, Satie, the composer, wears sunglasses because he's a musician. So sunglasses existed in the late 19th century, but they were used for things like looking at eclipses or going mountain climbing or people that have visual disturbances or problems with their eyes. People didn't wear sunglasses as a fashion statement, but we used that to signal to the audience that he was the equivalent of a rock star in the late 19th century. So it's a combination of things like that. Another way we do it is what we call natural selection, which is, for instance, in the opening scene in Gatsby, when the girls, when Daisy's lying in the couch and her dress is described as blowing up like a big balloon. Well, the most common dresses were kind of, for that afternoon period, were white cotton embroidered shapeless shifts. They just kind of cinematographical, really. And so there was another kind of dress that existed at the same period that was a little bit more edgy, which was called a robe de style. It was a shape that was based on an 18th century panier skirt. So we used that for Daisy because it gave more shape and volume, and we felt it just felt like a cloud because it naturally had the volume. And then, as I said earlier, in Elvis, we made decisions regarding the timeline of his costumes to make sure we were supporting the story. So in the back of the car, when Priscilla is picking up Lisa Marie and he's getting on a plane, and they're in the back of the car, they're kind of finally breaking up. They're in the completely copied outfit that they wore to the divorce court. And famously, there's a photo of them walking out of the divorce court holding hands. And we used those costumes in the back of the car to kind of condense all that moment, all that story into that small scene. So it's all those techniques are employed by Baz to help tell the story in as an authentic way as possible.
Wow. I love that.
That
is
is
so
what I think is truly fascinating, what I think is the most fascinating, or one of the most fascinating things, is how clothes and costumes can truly convey stories within themselves. And I absolutely love how you do that and convey that through your work in all those films that you just mentioned, and like how those secret hidden messages, rather than,
I love the sunglasses
example. The sunglasses example or the Gatsby example are so terrific. And it's just like you can tell a part of the story without even having any lines, anything happen. It just it explains so much, and I think
it's like reading between the lines.
Exactly.
And I think what I really, really love is how all of them are like a parallel to modern day. Like, even if they didn't historically do it the same way, because we live in a different time period now, we're able to interpret those little like sunglasses and we can see him in a totally different light because of that. And I think it's so amazing how you kind of tie both the past and the present together to truly convey the story in the best possible way.
And I mean, fashion is a unique form of self-expression, and you and Baz are both brilliant in the ways that you use it to convey a film, but it can be hard for us as teenagers to develop a personal and a unique style that really speaks to who we are, especially because there's so much clutter and so much exterior information from things like social media. So how would you encourage young people to find and truly embrace their own style?
I think with social media and all these micro trends, there was, I think, bogcore, which was based on the bogs in Ireland or in Scandinavia, was fashionable for about 7 seconds. And there's cottagecore and fairycore and whatever. And I say that there seems to be a lot of online pressure in fashion for people to identify as a certain kind of person. And I think to myself, one of the great pleasures when I was growing up is that one day you would dress as a punk, the next day you'd dress as a fairy, the next day you'd be dressed in a preppy outfit. I think youth is about experimenting in all the languages of fashion and not feeling like you have to kind of commit to anything in particular or be pressured into committing. I think that experimentation and taking pleasure in what you wear, and, teenagers look great in almost anything. I mean, youth is the best accessory. So you should be enjoying it and embracing all of the different ways that you can dress and express yourself and not feel pressured by social media, by society, to kind of lock yourself down into this narrow world. I think everybody has to declare themselves far too early these days. And, my daughter said to me, I don't want to be one thing. I want to dress like a fairy one day and I want to do this. And I said, of course you should. You don't need to commit for the rest of your life. Probably if you end up working in the Supreme Court, it'll be difficult to show up as a fairy every day. But then I make no judgment. I think you could be a brilliant Supreme Court judge and dress as a fairy. I don't have a problem with it. But I'm just saying it's unlikely, as one starts to do different jobs. And there are, it's a really interesting conversation because, often at dinner we argue because I say, well, I think there are appropriate clothes for appropriate jobs because they carry messages, or they're, a fireman wears an outfit so he doesn't catch on fire when he's in a fire. A nurse wears a uniform so you recognize they're the nurse and not the patient, but also for sanitary reasons, whatever. So there are some rules, but I just think when you're young, do just explore.
Absolutely. I think that Anastasia and I have had this struggle as well when we were younger, especially, where we were like, what aesthetic am I? Am I like cottagecore, or am I dark academia, or what is my aesthetic? But the reality is, like, when you're 13 years old, you're just gonna change too much, and there's no point in stressing yourself out and redoing your entire wardrobe because you need to fit a standard.
Mercedes has the greatest wardrobe ever. She has clothes pouring out.
It's a bit of an issue sometimes.
But she has like every single color under the sun. And so if you're looking for something, if she wants to do more like a darker outfit one day, she can do that. If she wants to go like all full colors, if she wants to dress as a fairy, she can do that because she has all the fundamental elements in her wardrobe.
Yeah.
And I don't know how she did it. My wardrobe was a lot more like neutrals.
It's just collecting over the years.
I know, she just has so many amazing clothes that, like, I love borrowing from her because you never know what you're gonna find in there.
But the thing is, it's true, it's a problem, but I've stockpiled all these things over the years because I think that if I want to wear a certain style of clothes, or if anybody wants to wear a certain style of clothes, wear it, enjoy it, and then don't tie your identity to something you're wearing, because you're so much more than the clothes that you wear, and it's a great way to express yourself. But just like how you change, so do your clothes.
And also, it's part of the theater. Decorating yourself is the first human expression of art, right? Before we painted cave walls, before we did anything, we decorated ourselves. And it's the one artistic expression that the entirety of humanity every day engages in. Even if they think they're not engaging in it, they're making decisions about what they're going to wear, right? So it's an artistic expression. And why you don't need to dress like Wednesday Addams every day, and you don't also need to dress like Barbie every day. You can be whoever you want every day. And I think too, I was, name drop. I was talking to Mucha Prada about it, and she was talking about how she feels that the idea of, saying that a CEO of a company can't dress like Barbie is actually anti-feminist. Because really, it's particularly with women, I think that society wants us to dress appropriately for our roles because everybody wants the signals to know. They don't want you to be a dangerous woman or a woman who's going to surprise you. People like it when women stick to their lane. You're a soccer mum, you're a yoga teacher, you're a whatever. And I think we've got to shake it up a little bit. Don't let people dictate who you are.
For sure. I think that if you're feeling like being more fun today, put on your brightest colors. But if you feel like you want to do something a little bit darker, put on your darker clothes. You can dress up like Wednesday Addams.
You can do what you want. And I think that when you find that freedom, that is when you can truly express who you are. And so if there's a teen who's listening to this and they're interested in pursuing anything in the world of fashion, what is like one piece of advice that you would share with them?
I think that you can never underestimate the value of skills-based learning. Like to have skills to express yourself, whether it's through drawing or Photoshop or collage, or you need to find a way of getting your ideas out so people understand what they are. And sometimes you have to do the drawing just so you understand what you're trying to do. So I think that there are some very lucky people who are able to basically sit in their own room and go, I'm going to start a streetwear company. And from their bedroom, they just start kind of from nothing, and it becomes a huge success. That does happen. But what's behind that is that they've sat in their bedroom sewing T-shirts or jeans or printing them or experimenting them or working on it with their friends or whatever. But I think that two pieces of advice: develop your skills, right? Whatever they are, experiment, make things, try things on your friends, make things for yourself. Consider seriously some kind of tertiary education that's around the fashion industry, just because it exposes you to a whole lot of different problem-solving situations that will enable you in a safe kind of space to try out a whole bunch of things that you won't be able to necessarily try out in a commercial situation. But I think it's like, start drawing, start cutting, start sewing, start collaging, just start, develop your skill, think about going to university for the subject. If that's not right for you, maybe you get an apprenticeship with a fashion company. But I think you need to be willing to, be able to have something to share, a skill, a viewpoint, Just saying you're a fashion designer doesn't make you one.
Totally. It's
I
all about,
agree.
I think you can also kind of develop your own, and obviously I'm not a fashion expert in any sense, but you can develop your own style and how you like to create through trial and error, especially when you're a young teen. Really kind of hone in on what you really even want to pursue and the types of things you like designing and that you're good in designing.
And also like listening to podcasts and like listening to different people who have experience in there and listening to them speak about their experiences and learning from their mistakes, as well as finding out, is this still something I'm interested in after I've heard all about it?
And trial and error, again, is just so key and so important.
I agree.
If you're bored with your clothes and you still have a sewing machine at home, cut them up, sew them back together again. Just like try.
Yeah.
Exactly. Work on those skills and see where it takes you. So this is a little bit of a twist in the interview, but you have a lot of projects and a lot of successes, and obviously that takes a lot of time on the work end of things. But how do you balance work time with family time, with also time just to spend with yourself?
I'm in a different phase of my life now, but prior it was a really tough. I think as a working woman, I had guilt about not spending enough time with my kids, even though they were the only other thing in they would say I spent too much time, driving them crazy. It's that balance, that work-life balance, I think is a constant struggle. I hope it's less of a struggle for your generation. I want it to be an easier choice, because I always felt like, am I doing my job at work, 120%? And am I doing my job at home 120%? Well, as we've discussed, whether I spent all the time at work every day or all the time at home every day, I still wouldn't be able to bring 120% to either of those things every day. So there are always compromises in life, where some days you'll be firing on all cylinders and some days you won't. And so I found it really difficult, and I just would like young women to feel less guilty about it. That's not to say that I don't think everyone should try really hard. It's good to try to be a perfectionist to some degree. It's good to, what do I mean by that? Maybe perfectionism is the wrong word, but it's good to try and better yourself. Right? It's not about perfectionism. That's the wrong. You should be trying to better yourself all the time. But it's that same thing. As I'm getting older, I'm allowing myself to be still push, but be gentle and go, okay, what are we going to do? And, I would have meditation. Look, to be honest with you, I found it very difficult to find time for myself. I think my mental health suffered. I think that, Baz always used to say to me, it's just like in the aeroplanes. You should be putting your oxygen mask on first before you start to help anyone else. And I think that that's something I'm starting to learn, but everybody needs to know how to put up their hand and in a positive way say, hey, everyone, I need to pause and reflect. And I just need 5 minutes by myself, or I just need to go and do this one thing. And usually people are super understanding. It's our own inhibitions that stop us from asking for that.
Exactly.
And I think too, we think that what we have to do for ourselves is so ginormous, it's unachievable. So it comes down to small things more regularly. A walk around the block. Go make yourself a cup of tea. Don't look at your phone while you're doing it. Or say to yourself, as a treat, I just want to scroll. I'm setting my timer. I've got 7 minutes to scroll. This is a treat. I can have my cup of tea and scroll, or whatever the little breaks in your day, so that it's not always like I have to meditate for 7.5 hours, or I have to climb Mount Kilimanjaro to find myself. Well, whoever is going to be able to do that realistically.
Exactly.
We love to say it. It's like the small bits matter. Like they really add up and they bring us a lot of happiness. Like even if it's just the small little pieces, and it's easier to find the time for those as well.
For sure. And I am like the biggest not morning person, but I actually start almost enjoying them in the morning when I'm getting ready and all the spring light comes in. And it just makes me so happy watching such a beautiful sunrise and all this beautiful light come in that it almost makes it just a little bit worth
we
it.
get it. It's so tough to find time for yourself, find time to spend with others, and we feel guilty a lot. But just, realizing that, hey, that oxygen mask first, like, how can you be a good parent, a good coworker, a good teammate if you yourself don't feel fulfilled? And that's why it's so important to put ourselves first, even though I get it, such a challenge.
Exactly.
A real challenge, because I think we're conditioned as women and as young women that it's unhealthy to do that.
Yeah. Even though it can often be the opposite if we don't take care of ourselves. Like,
Exactly.
we start to not do as well and not be able to bring as much effort, as much quality to other parts of our lives and our other relationships. And so that's why it's so important, those small breaks, those are easier to take and they still make an impact. And that's why I think that's a great suggestion.
Exactly. So this is a bit more on a personal note, but do you ever make clothes for yourself?
During COVID, I made a few things. And I do like knitting. So I have knitted a few things. But now, because I'm time poor, I tend to buy fabric and get someone to make it for me.
That's still awesome. And I think
Exactly.
that,
It's more custom.
Exactly. And I love how you said, like, that knitting, because, like, that's such a therapeutic little way to, again, take a break for yourself.
I used to be obsessed with knitting during the pandemic. I would, like, have, like, I don't know, like a book online or something, and I would, like, knit while reading it, and it was just so therapeutic, especially when it was warm outside. I would sit outside and with the sun on me, and it was so nice.
So if you could go back and tell your teenage self one piece of advice, what's one piece of advice that you wish you could give your teenage self?
Don't be so hard on yourself.
I love that.
Be a little more gentle, a little kinder, and even though you think you were very flawed, probably having a less negative talk inside your head would have made you a much easier person to live with, and you would have achieved probably maybe not more, but with a lot more ease.
Yeah, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and I think that as teenagers we feel this time pressure. Like, I know that, for instance, I have to remind myself, I'm like, I am 16, like, I have so many years ahead of me to, like, before I even graduate high school. And so it's like this feeling of, like, the life is long, and, like, it's, again, a marathon, not a sprint. It's okay to take breaks, take downtime, and not always be going and achieving, because at the end of the day, life is for living, and that's something that I'm constantly battling with, and I think both of us deal with. But, like, not being the pressures and, like, the perfectionist pressures as well, and, like, remembering the percentage of, like, you can't be 120% for everything, but putting a little bit in everything is better than just zeroing out on all accounts.
For sure. Yeah. Do you have a motivational quote that you love to remember? I find that motivational quotes are just such a great way to keep yourself going when sometimes you feel like you need a little bit of an extra push.
Okay, so mine is so boring. Okay, I'm really embarrassed. Just one foot in front of the other. Just put one foot in front of the other.
I love that so much.
I think that's the best way, because that's such a good way to not get overwhelmed by all the noise of, like, oh, I could do that and I could do that, and oh, wait, but what if that happens? Or what
and
if
then
they
I
say
still
this?
Like 5 other things to do in my to-do list. Like, just, like, focusing, I need to do this right now, and then I'm just gonna focus on that, and then once I'm done that, I can worry about the other things. But it's just
such a great way to prevent
slowly
feeling
starting to climb the staircase.
Yeah.
I have so much going on in my head all the time. So if I don't do that, it's like because I have to break the task down, or it can feel like like the ball in that big ball rolling towards you. And
I think it was Indiana Jones.
Oh, Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that feeling. I know what you mean. I think most of us at some point can think about a time when we just feel this, like, rush coming towards us, and the best way to kind of combat that is just focusing on what's ahead of me. That's all. Just That's the next thing I need to think
Keep
about.
running towards the light and away from the giant ball.
Exactly.
And also, I think break the cycle. Because you know how you get into those spirals in your head? So you go, okay, stop. Right. What am I going to do? First of all, I'm going to take one circle of the block, Then I'm going to come in, I'm going to make a cup of tea, and I'm going to sit at the computer and I'm going to make a list. Then I'm going to just do one step at a time. I can't do more than I can do, just one step at a time. One foot in front of the other.
Yes, and I love how, you incorporate taking a little break and going outside into that, because that's such a great way to kind of reset and get out of that spiral.
Get out of the spiral, the death spiral.
Yes, definitely. So what do you like to do every day that brings you a small bit of happiness?
I always wake up just at least, like it takes me, I suppose, half an hour to get ready. But I always tack on at least another 15 minutes because I like to have breakfast in bed, and I will always make myself breakfast in bed, and I will sit there, and it's just a moment. I'll sometimes read the newspaper, sometimes I won't, but I'll have a coffee, I'll have some yogurt, maybe some muesli on a little tray, and it's just 10 minutes, a little pocket of peace.
I love that. That's
So
such a great way to
much.
think of it. That sounds, just the way you describe it, sounds so comforting.
Oh
What
my
a wonderful
gosh.
way to roll into the day and start it off positively, because I think when you set your day off on a positive note, it's just so much easier to keep on having a better day and just having a little pocket of peace. I love that so much.
I think that is absolutely amazing.
If you feel terrible, if you're having a really bad, if you wake up and you just feel terrible, the other trick is don't give in to dressing sloppily, right?
Yeah.
It's on those days where you have to get dressed up.
You're right.
Because it's amazing how it cheers you up. And it doesn't mean you have to be in a formal gown, but there's a choice between wearing your worst sweatpants and your worst t-shirt and a cute outfit that's still in this vein of sweatpants and a t-shirt and whatever, but just dress yourself up.
Absolutely.
For sure.
It's remarkable how, putting on some nice clothes and trying to take care of ourselves can really boost our own mood and make us feel more confident, because that's so critical, is just feeling good.
I fully agree. I often try for school, at least now in spring, because it's so much easier. In Canada, winters are brutal, but especially during the spring, whenever me and Mercedes get the chance, we always try to wear a skirt or a dress. But I love being comfy at home, so whenever I get home, I'll always put on some sweatpants. But I feel like for the most part of the day, it just feels so uplifting to wear something nice and put together.
Uplift yourself.
Exactly.
So, do you have anything exciting coming up that you'd like to share with us? Any goals that you have or events happening, etc.?
What am I looking forward to? We're in the process of deciding on projects, so I can't really talk about them. But I'm really looking forward to the summer, when it will be a big research block for me. And I'm really looking forward. It'll involve some travel and a lot of reading and museums. And I'm really, really looking forward to that.
That sounds amazing and really exciting.
Would you be able to share where you're traveling to?
I will be in Europe.
Ooh.
Oh,
That
we love
sounds-
Europe. It's
Europe is so beautiful
beautiful,
there.
beautiful, and full of history. So, is there anywhere where our audience can find you if they want to keep up and learn more?
Well, I do have an Instagram account, which is Catherine Martin Designs, I think. So that is probably the best place to catch up with me. I'm a pretty inconsistent poster, so I do apologize. I've been really prioritizing myself and not focusing on just making kind of material for the sake of material. But that's the best place to find me, at Catherine Martin Designs.
Perfect. Love that so much. And we'll have that linked in the show notes so that anyone who wants to easily access it and check it out can do so. And we just want to say thank you so much for joining us
much.
today.
This has been such an amazing interview.
No, it's been so lovely speaking to such inspirational young women.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, and thank you so much to Catherine for joining us today.
She is just incredibly inspiring, so accomplished, so successful, and such a genuinely kind person.
I love her so much.
Speaking with her just completely boosted our moods. It was absolutely so inspiring. So, Anastasia, what was your biggest takeaway of today?
My biggest takeaway is that it is so important to not base yourself purely off perfection, because in the end, being perfect is something that nobody can achieve because we're all human. And like she said, we all like to put in the 120%, but the problem is we don't even have the 120% in us. And so we're going to be starting to take away that other 20% from other places in our lives, and all of a sudden we end up feeling drained and unhappy and just obsessed with perfection. And I think it's really important to understand that we can try doing the best of our abilities, but that's what it is. It's our best. We can't make it perfect because in the end, that's impossible. What about you, Mercedes?
I love that so much, and I love how much she talked about her own journey with her own mental health, as well as how she's overcome some of her challenges and what she still deals with. But my biggest takeaway in terms of collaborating with others, because that's a big aspect of the work Catherine does with her husband Baz, as well as something that we as teenagers have to do in our daily lives, and collaboration is, for the better or for the worse, an essential part of our lifestyle here. And I love what she said about active listening, not just listening to think about what you want to say in response, but actually listening with the intent of just hearing what the person you're speaking to has to say.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, please leave us a 5-star review from wherever you're listening. It really helps us out and we really appreciate it.
Also, be sure to join our happiness family. We'd really appreciate it. It's completely free and we would love to have you, and you can join by following Hack Your Happiness on whatever podcast listening platform you're on now. See you next time!